Okay, what's up, world? This is Carly Cosmo, and I want to talk about Lucifer. Let's talk about Lucifer, the bringer of the light. You see, the bringer of the light, which means he guides us into order, into structure. Let's talk about the misconceptions of Lucifer, about Lucifer, as well as some of the things that people don't typically know. Okay, so some things that people do typically know if they've already done some good amount of research on Lucifer is that Lucifer does like things like roses, the color red, color black, um, even sometimes the color purple. Lucifer definitely enjoys books, some of the offerings that you can bring to Lucifer, because Lucifer is the one who likes to bring knowledge and likes to dwell within knowledge and make things manifest through knowledge. Right? That is why Lucifer is called the illuminator, the bringer of light. Ha! So, in bringing light, some people get really confused about it because light is thought to be of white origin, right? And so a lot of people associate Lucifer with white angel and white skin, and a lot of black people get really afraid of Lucifer and don't really want anything to do with it, which is a big mistake because in the ancient Greek culture, this is where Lucifer was created, at least the name. Before Greek culture came around and came about, Lucifer already existed as Venus. Okay, so this is where this, and we're not giving away Venus's energy to Lucifer. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we're separating these two concepts right now, because Lucifer is a concept that is based off of Venus. It's not exactly the same thing, because in this popular culture right now, especially with all of the Christian hate, both given and received, there is a misconception that Lucifer is just this purely evil being. And so this is why I wanted to address first the culture of thinking that his light, right, is just this pure white light. It's just not, it's not even remotely what that is. And so let's discuss one of the first mistaken notions that people have about Lucifer, which is that Lucifer is this pure white light. When in reality, light can exist and does exist in many different colors, many different spectrums of color. So Lucifer guides you to the light, but it's not just the white light. This light can be red, this light can be purple, green, especially within this particular cosmic entity in which we live in. Understand that Lucifer is not just a purely white being. The most common notion about Lucifer is that Lucifer is this white skinned being with long blonde hair. And a lot of people see Lucifer that way because that was the way that he was first introduced to our consciousness and into our reality as a pure white being with blonde hair. But in reality, every single being takes their own form according to how they want you to see them and what will make you more comfortable with seeing them, especially a being like Lucifer. Okay, let me turn this light back on. And I think a lot of that has a lot to do with the reason why people misconstrue the Luciferian energy and also be very afraid of it. Because there is a notion of it being associated with white supremacy. And a lot of that comes from Greek culture. One seems to be the supreme over every other culture, as you can see with their mythology, and how even the education system raises that mythology above all other mythology. It's not something to feel good about because we can see that it's really fucked up the face of the world, especially with healers. But that's for a different story. I'm specifically referring to Chiron. So let's go ahead and pause that because hold on, let me go a little bit more so that you people who are just like obstinate right now, you're just angry right now because I had the audacity to say that. Let me just go ahead and point out, and you're probably calling me Christian face right now, right? Let me just go ahead and point out that this is the reason how Christianity has grown and blown up so much, because the healer thusly needs another person, a sanctified person, to heal them. Okay, so let's go ahead and back up out of that thought form and come back into reality of Lucifer. This currently is one of Lucifer's primary sigils. Okay, there are other Luciferian sigils, especially within other cultures, that are heavily worshipped and kind of open up a gateway to that particular culture. But that sigil that I just showed you was the most. This is the most primary. The primary sigil used for Lucifer. Lucifer's N is Renich, Tasa, Ubarka, Biasa, Ikar, Lucifer. And you can actually, if you search on YouTube, find Lucifer's N so that you can listen to it. One of my favorites is Through Satan and Sons. You can go ahead and listen to that if you want to, or just do your own. I would prefer to do it myself because you never know what other people's hidden intentions are underneath the meditations that they give you. So just to be more safe, I would go that route. And this is the reason why certain people kind of get banned from telling you information, because when they tell you the information, they make sure that they mention key points like what I just said, whereas other people really do advocate for some type of domination of the mind. Lucifer, in my opinion, in my experience, is more about being free than anything else. This is the point of illumination. This is the point of this energy being associated with guiding light, okay? Now, the reason why Lucifer is known as a guiding light, known as the illuminator, known as the morning light, right, is because, and actually Lucifer has two different, well, Venus does, has two different faces. It's the morning light as well as the evening light, and the evening light is known to be more of a darker aspect of Lucifer and of the planet Venus. Now, like I was saying before, very briefly, let me go into this. What I was saying before is that the Greek culture in ancient Greece, when they adopted the word Lucifer from the Latin language, they themselves applied this term to Venus. And the reason for that is because of the way Venus actually travels throughout the sky. Okay, and Venus always comes before the sun rises. You'll see Venus rise, and Venus kind of looks as though it's dragging and pulling the sun along upon a sky chariot. And so I think that it's super important for us to also notate and realize and understand, right, Venus's importance in this, because it has lots to do with creativity, a lot to do with love, a lot to do with passion, a lot to do with expression, a lot to do with being well off. When you're well off, you are able to maintain your independence, your freedom. Okay? This is not only the Star of Chaos, but right here in the middle, this is actually a vampiric form of it, but this, which I'm not gonna say nothing, but this is symbolic of the Ankh. I should have showed you. Okay. The Ankh from ancient Egyptian culture, which is in Africa. And it's very important to notate that because we know that throughout history, right, there have been quite a few people who have come and infringed upon African culture and claimed it as his own. And I'm not saying that Lucifer, especially not this concept that we have of Lucifer right now, is of the African culture. I'm not saying that at all because that was kind of developed more across the world, but definitely within Europe. All right. And so with this concept of Lucifer, we actually have another planet, and this is why it's super important for you to have this understanding of where the name Lucifer comes from and where even the concept of Lucifer comes from. So originally, it was just another name for Venus, but after and throughout time, right, especially after the death of Jesus Christ, no pun intended, after the death of Jesus Christ, you have, my food is getting cold on y'all. Also, just getting back in to my line of thoughts. After the death of Jesus Christ, there was this kind of notion that kind of separated Lucifer from this planetary aspects of Venus because they had to realize that if we were going to throw down the planetary mascot of Venus, which was to convince people away from Venusian energy and also to convince people not to worship and work through and with the planets, you would then also need to kind of separate that notion because as you can see, entertainment is a huge fucking industry right now. Huge fucking industry. There's no way that you can keep those two entities attached to each other without actually disabling yourself within that realm. Right? So you gotta keep an eye. Just see who really are the culprits. In my opinion, do your research, of course, but you gotta look and see who's really all up in that energy. Who's trying to claim that shit for themselves? Because, especially as a black person, you know that people, and I'm focusing definitely on you because, first of all, this is more for me than it is for anybody else. Because of my own interests, right? But also because there's a lot of us who we don't engage with that energy. Specifically because of what we've been told about it without doing our research, you know. But anyway. Also keep in mind, that is a symbol of Venus. Okay? That's a symbol of Venus. Who's all up in that space? Who was all up in that space? The last Egyptian pharaoh was Greek. Last Egyptian pharaoh was Greek, but who is currently trying to claim Venus as their own? This is why I started off saying what I said about white supremacy. It's not white people that's the problem. It's white supremacy that's the fucking problem. genuinely, because Lucifer is a spirit and an energy and an organism that appreciates knowledge and definitely appreciates the truth. And there are many different types of truth, which is why they say that Lucifer wears many faces. I forget what they call it to make it an insult, right? Leave it below if you remember the phrase that is said to make that an insult. He wears many faces. He does wear many faces, and that's perfect. That's great. He should be wearing many faces. It's boring if you don't. And also, how the fuck are you going to interact with people? Especially people who are scared and or ignorant. How are you going to do your job if you're not wearing many different faces? The problem is getting stuck in one face because so many people think that this is your only face. It's not. It's not. So, I hone in on that fact because Lucifer will come up to people and approach people, and you won't even know that it's Lucifer because you're expecting to see a white, pale-faced man with pale blonde hair. And that's not his only face. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you today about Lucifer. The next thing I want to absolutely make you aware about Lucifer is that this is a nature spirit. This is a spirit of, and a part of nature that's so intrinsically woven into nature. That's inseparable. So again, another reason why you would cast the spirit down, right? Lucifer and Venus. And I have to make sure that I go ahead and kind of hone in on that fact as well, that Lucifer and Venus, you have to kind of be aware of the both of those entities, because Lucifer comes with masculine energy as well as feminine energy. So, let's see. What else? We went over offerings. We went over a common misconception. We went over the origins of Lucifer. We didn't go into detail, which we possibly can go into detail in later time, because we do need to be aware of how other people and other cultures approach Lucifer, especially cultures who are becoming more and more popular. Okay? Now, we understand that Lucifer we consider to be a fallen angel. But how do other cultures interact with this Luciferian energy, and what do they say to it as they are presenting their offerings? Because this does affect the energy of Lucifer as well. So, we'll explore that in a different video. But as for this video, I definitely want to thank you for watching, especially if you made it to this point, and ask you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and return for more information next time.